Wake up, NHL fans. Happy Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend. This is your morning cup of hockey alongside Colby Cohen. I'm Jonny Lazarus. It was a very entertaining weekend around the NHL. We're going to hit on a lot of things like trouble in Toronto, the Islanders maybe have an all-star snub, Bobby Brink being scratched in his hometown by John Tortorella after Torts was the good guy around the NHL. So many different things to get to, but before we do any of that, I want to hear about my co-host weekend. So Colby, tell me about it. What'd you do this weekend?
Well, first off, it's a holiday weekend, Johnny. So I think a lot of people are probably still celebrating their weekend. I think most people here in the United States are off work today. So people are probably in a good mood right now. I'm sure lots of people are tuned in watching the show. And I got to tell you, throughout the weekend, it was low key for me. Look, when you have a young child, your weekends become all about the young child, Johnny. So now that I don't have to take care of you on the weekends, now I take care of my own. But there were a lot of things that happened this weekend where I'm sitting there going, I kind of wish we were on air tomorrow. I got an opinion. I got something to talk about tomorrow. So you're right. Lots to get to today. Not so much necessarily game specific, although we will obviously touch on some results. But, for the most part, we're kind of at this point in the NHL season. We're just at the halfway point. We're coming up on All-Star break. I think guys at this time of year are just trying to sort of get to the All-Star break because guys want that opportunity to recharge. But because of how tight races are right now, you can't really afford to take a week off. You can't really, as a team, afford to pack it in, a week or two early before the All-Star game because you could quickly find yourself, on the outside looking in. So lots going on. Like we said, holiday, which is great for people. I'm sure they're taking advantage of it, but no better topic to start with than the the Toronto Maple Leafs. Sorry. It's hard to keep those two teams straight because they both seem to consistently do the same thing, although the Dallas Cowboys look like they were finally poised to do it. But I know that's something we've said about the Toronto Maple Leafs before as well.
I mean, that game last night, I don't want to dive too much into it, but like I was thinking the same thing about just a hockey game versus a football game. If you're sitting there at a home rink watching your team get blown out, what's the worst sport to sit in a venue and have your team get absolutely killed? Like I think baseball is probably the best because baseball you can still like enjoy a nice day, have a hot dog, have a beer, and like one swing of the bat can score 4 runs, your team could be back in it. Football is like probably the most painful of any sport, I think, to sit there and watch your team get blown out.
I disagree, especially if you're talking playoff baseball. I think at the end of the day, in a passionate sports market, playoffs, when your team gets shit kicked in the playoffs, it's going to be devastating. It does not matter which of the sport you're talking about. I mean, you can't tell me
Thanks for
when the
embracing the
Leafs
debate.
you can't tell me when the Leafs get kicked out of the playoffs every year, it's any worse than what the Cowboys dealt with last night.
At least
Although
they could like fight each other and like do
I
something to make it entertaining.
I guess for the Cowboys, it was in front of 35 million people. Where I don't think a Leafs playoff game is getting 35 million hits on the TV. So yeah, I don't know. I think losing in the playoffs and getting shit kicked no matter what sport, especially in the playoffs, it's not going to be that warm. So people aren't going to be hanging out, drinking beers really as much at a baseball game. I mean, I went to a Phillies playoff game this year where they lost to the Diamondbacks and it sucked. The place was like a morgue the whole game. So it is funny though to see memes going around social media of Dak Prescott with a Toronto Maple Leafs helmet. I mean, I gotta say, like, I got a kick out of that, and
I saw that.
I really thought Dak was going to get over the hump this year, but again, it's they just keep rolling it back, just like they do in Toronto. They don't seem like they want to make changes. They want to seem like they want to keep doing the same thing over and over again, and then you look at what's happened to the Toronto Maple Leafs over the last week, Johnny. I mean, I know Leafs Nation was all, oh, we're all set now. Nylander got his extension. That distraction's in the rear view mirror. We go out to California. They beat the LA Kings, which everyone said, okay, that's a legit win, 3-0. Later, we come to find out that the LA Kings can't, they're playing their worst hockey of the season. I mean, like, I think there's literal reason to panic in LA the way that they're playing. And then they beat up on those other kind of shitty West Coast teams. And I know our producer Vic, he's riding high. He's a Leafs fan, so he's all excited. We're all set now. Where's the cup? Let's get ready for the parade. And then they come back over to this side of the conference, Johnny, and well, I guess not truly, but and they've had trouble the last 3 games, man. Not only have they lost, but they've blown leads in all 3 of these games. It started with the Islanders. They're up 3-0 in that game. They end up 3-1 in that game, and they end up losing that game in overtime. And I mean, it just snowballs from there for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, what is going on? And you can't even blame goaltending right now.
No,
Normally I blame goaltending, but
no.
I mean, it's it's painful to continually watch this team unable to defend. It really is.
And before I give my opinion on it, I just want to shout out Jeremiah Maxwell in the chat. Said he's still celebrating the Cowboys' loss as a Giants fan. He can tell us that much. But I think for Toronto, is it a culture problem? Like, I feel like we don't talk about that enough. Like every big organization, every team that wins, every team that gets to the playoffs, like they have a strong culture. But this Toronto one seems very odd and interesting, where I think there is a lot of buy-in and belief in Toronto. No pun intended with the title of today's show. But under Sheldon Keefe, under management, the way this team is built, like I know they are put in a position to succeed with the star power they have. You talked about their goaltending, their defense, maybe not being up to par with what you need to win a Stanley Cup, but like the group in the room, do they go out every night and do they believe that they are going to win the Stanley Cup when they play a game? There are teams that go out and obviously say it, but is it really in that room?
All right, well, Johnny,
I
hold
don't
on
know.
a
I don't
sec.
feel it.
You're
Uh-huh.
talking
Am I too
culture.
far ahead?
What does culture mean to you? Because we use the word culture in hockey and it's become such a buzzword.
Mhm.
So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
When you say, do they not have culture in the room? Define what it is you mean by culture. What is it that you're looking for that you're not seeing culture?
Well, you look at Sheldon Keefe's comments, which I think we should, tee up here in a second, just about McKinnon, McCarr, and Taves and how he speaks about those 3 players and how they're in a different league. Like, if I'm a head coach in the NHL, I'm getting my guys to believe that they are better than anyone in the NHL, especially with a group like Toronto that has the core 4 that everyone raves about. They just signed Nylander to a huge extension. He's supposed to be one of the best players in the NHL. He gets called out. It just doesn't seem to me like it's like I have your back, you have my
Yeah.
back kind of culture where
All right, well
and
let's play
yeah.
that sound.
Mhm.
I mean, you guys are watching the game. Like when McKinnon's line gets out there with Makar and Taves, I mean, the caliber of play, that's not the NHL. Like that's another league, right?
So this is comments that Sheldon Keefe made after they blew a 3-0 first period lead to Colorado. They go on to lose that game 5-3. But I'll ask you again, are
Yeah.
you talking culture from top to bottom? Are you talking culture inside the locker room? But again, I want you to define
Yeah.
culture because I know what I have an idea of what it is, but I want to hear what
Just
you think.
define culture. Like you want
No,
me
I
to
want
define?
you to
Yeah.
define your meaning of you thinking that they don't have culture.
It just doesn't seem like there's a collective buy-in. It seems like it's a ton of individual egos that aren't there for the greater good. And that's I think what a culture is in hockey. It's, and I'm not just talking contracts, not talking money because that is what it is. But every night the way you play, like I think Carolina, sure, they've had their struggles this season, but
But they played better lately.
yeah, they've been playing amazing lately. You know what their culture is. You know what you're getting every night from the Carolina Hurricanes. That is a strong culture and a strong foundation of an NHL team. I
Well,
think they
let me pick up on that because
okay.
I think you make a good point.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You bring up the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Those players are going to make, let's call it the right plays 95% of the time.
Mhm.
Okay. They're not going to stay out for a bit of a longer shift. They're not going to try the extra move at the red line. They're going to make sure the puck gets deep so like fresh bodies can get on the ice. And I believe that starts with Rod Brindamore
Yeah.
in Carolina, because players are going to be held accountable by a coach, which then they hold each other accountable for. I think the Boston Bruins are another great
Agreed.
example of that. They have had that level of culture, let's call it, since 2010, maybe 11. Obviously, that was the
Earlier,
year of the
probably.
Stanley Cup.
Earlier.
But you have players who are willing to sort of morph their identity for the better of the team, and you have players that don't cheat. They don't take shortcuts. They don't take nights off. Let's say a player's not having a good night. Well, they go out and they play physical and they contribute somewhere else. And to me, that's culture. Okay.
Well, I want to ask you something. Can I ask you something?
Go ahead.
Actually, I don't even know if it's a question. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you did it to me before, so I'm getting you back kind of. But think about it. There's been so much discussion over the last 5 seasons about the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Carolina Hurricanes. Both organizations haven't really done much to shake up their core, yet every year there's a belief that the Carolina Hurricanes can win the Stanley Cup. And every year there's never a belief that the Toronto Maple Leafs can win a Stanley Cup. So what does that tell you? To me, it's crazy that Toronto has gone year in, year out with this same exact look. And Carolina's, again, doing the same exact thing because there is that true belief and true to their core of they can do it and they're doing things the right way.
Well, but I think that also tells you a lot of it is narrative. I think a lot of it is narrative, because I think anybody within the Toronto organization believes that they can win a Stanley Cup, just like anybody within the Carolina organization believes they can win a Stanley Cup. Do I think either of them are Stanley Cup contenders? No, not the way that they're constructed. I don't. I think Carolina is a structured and north-south team as you'll get, but at the end of the day, I don't think they have the difference makers to get it done. Now, they've really tried to build their back end, and they in my opinion have one of the most talented defensive cores in the NHL. So that's always going to give them a chance. But look, you just look at the types of players that the Toronto Maple Leafs want to continue to pay and continue to load up their roster with. And look, these are star players. Look how many guys they're going to have in the All-Star game. It's half the freaking Toronto Maple Leafs. But at the end of the day, I'd be willing to put money on the fact that this is a team that is another early round exit Toronto Maple Leaf team. You look at the way that they're playing. You look at the way that they defend. Okay. You look at the way that, they don't defend really. They're careless with the puck. They don't play accountable. They really don't. And when you see a team that is this talented continuously not playing accountable, it didn't work with Mike Babcock, and it doesn't seem to be working with Sheldon Keefe. And I like Sheldon Keefe. I really do. I remember back in the day when he was a coach of the Pembroke Lumber Kings. I was 15 years old. I was getting ready to go play hockey in Syracuse for the Syracuse Stars Junior A team, which was in Canada. I remember Sheldon actually trying to recruit myself, my dad, to come out there and play for him instead. And I remember having some conversations with him and always liked him. That was at a time when I was sort of considering the major junior path in my hockey career. But I just think, based on what we've seen over the last 3 games against tougher teams, the way they've blown leads, some of the comments coming out of Toronto, some weird press conferences, the comments about the Avs. And then I want to play another clip for you from Sheldon Keefe, because to me, Jonny, this sounds like a guy who kind of just says, you know what, fuck it. I got nothing to lose. I'm probably on borrowed time. And the comments coming out of Sheldon Keefe's mouth have been strange. He kind of called out some of his players. Let's take a listen right here, and then we'll kind of discuss as to what we think this means.
I just thought putting our best people together and going best on best, give us a chance to keep the puck away from those guys a little bit more, could help us. At the same time, kind of try to get more out of Willie, because Willie on his line was not good. That line was not good for us at all tonight. I don't know if they didn't have one good shift that I can remember. So I had to get Willie away from that. So all those things just kind of fit.
So he very easily could have talked about his second line without singling out Willie Nylander. This is a guy who 4 days ago was given an 8-year contract with no move, no trade, big money. You've heard my opinion on it. Sure, the guy's a star. He deserved to get paid. I think it continues to hold up their roster. But is that the head coach taking a shot at the general manager? I mean, I don't know how you can't connect the dots there. Here's an 8-year extension with no move, no trade. Oh, and by the way, you are so bad that I don't know what to do with you tonight. I mean, you didn't have to do that. It was one game. I mean, the guy has played good hockey this year. It's not like Nylander's been bad all year. It's been the opposite. He's had a career year, Johnny.
No, I completely agree, but also I think you can talk on it more, as someone who signs an NHL contract. I mean, maybe not to the extent of Nylander, but so we've seen it a lot in the NHL where someone signs a big ticket and then they kind of check out for a couple games. So maybe that's, Sheldon Keefe's way of just getting him to stay engaged and, not doze off after securing his money and securing his term for a very long time. I think that's I don't want to say that's something we should overreact to. Like I think it's typical for coaches to call out guys, maybe not single out someone, that recently, who has been as good as, like you said, Nylander. But we've seen it in years past where I forget which coach in Dallas called out like Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin. That kind of woke them up a little bit, even though they were, pretty big stars in the NHL at the time of that call out. Do you remember who it was by any chance?
Yeah, Rick Bowness.
Is Rick Bowness? Yeah, like these things happen, and sometimes players need a kick in the ass.
But it's not. It's one thing to call a player out, Johnny, but it's another thing to call him out 3 days after he just secured a massive extension with no move, no trade. I like this isn't just let's pay the guy. This is let's pay him and let's give him all the control. I mean, he could shut it down for 8 years, and they can't even trade him without his. There's not even it's not even a list. He's got 8 years. I mean, he could probably get traded this season because I'm guessing he doesn't have no move, no trade right now. But I mean, I don't know, man. I think that this team in Toronto needs a shakeup. I think this team in Toronto does not play thorough. I think this team in Toronto does not play like a team that is worried about being held accountable to things. I don't like seeing people get fired who I think are good people. Like when Mike Babcock got fired this year, I thought that was phenomenal because everything that we hear about Mike Babcock is that he's a total asshole and a little bit of a piece of shit, right? Look how he treated those guys. But I don't think that's the case with Sheldon Keefe. So I'm certainly not going to celebrate that. But it has to be time for a coaching change in Toronto. I mean, or you're just going to get the same results. Even like I think it's a roster issue here, Johnny, but I also think what else are you going to do? You got to shake things up a little bit. The way this team continues to turn pucks over and defend, it's just, I mean, they shoot themselves in the foot night after night.
Yeah, and poor Ilya Samsonov, man. Like, the crowd was behind him last night, cheering him, like trying to get him in good spirits, and they couldn't come out and find a way to win. But
like,
I don't want to jump over the Sheldon Keefe thing, because we know, I think, just as much as anyone else, in hockey, there's always politics, right? And you see a guy leave an organization, usually people go with him. I was surprised that when Kyle Dubas left, they didn't hire a new coach. And I'm not saying, that it was beyond necessary to do that, but you just see that happen very often where a GM goes and a coach goes and they totally just, turn a page and start a new chapter. But I was just a little like, I'm just questioning the loyalty here. Like, Sheldon Keefe's been here for a couple years now. He has all this talent and he's won one playoff round. Like at what point do you really draw the line? Like, that's
well,
really
I think I think Tree Living wanted to evaluate him for himself, see what the real problem was. Was it roster construction? Was it, was it coaching style? Does he have command of the locker room? I mean, look, it's been a roller coaster for Sheldon Keefe since he came, up from the Toronto Marlies as the head coach there, and he joined the Toronto Maple Leafs. And look, he's won everywhere he's been. He won in juniors. He was coach of the year in the OHL. He won a Calder, trophy for the Marlies. He has like the best winning percentage for the first 300 games of any head coach in the NHL who's made it to 300 games. So the guy wins in the regular season. The problem is it doesn't translate, which sort of makes me think a little bit like it is. I've always said it's roster construction. He's never been given a legitimate decor. I don't think he's ever had a legitimate true number one goaltender. And this is just the continued results that they get. But I mean, the guy has got to be losing sleep. He's in the mecca of hockey, Johnny. The media is tough. Look at this picture on our screen right now. The first picture, 2019. Okay.
Mhm.
The second picture is from when he had the press conference after they blew the lead to the Avs. I mean, this is a guy who looks like he's aged about 25 years in what, 4 years now. I
Mhm.
mean, he looks like he's put on a couple pounds. The hair looks a hell of a lot grayer. That's stressful lack of sleep right there, Johnny boy.
Yeah, definitely not a good glow up, or what's the opposite of a glow up, I guess. I don't even know what the phrase would be. But I have to imagine it's certainly a stressful time for Keefe, and there's always pressure on whoever's behind that bench in Toronto, whether you have the best team in the NHL or you have the worst team in the NHL. The fans are expecting wins. I mean, that's the name of the business. That's the name of the game. It's a results-based business. And, I do want to talk about another head coach that won the hearts over of a lot of NHL fans last week and then quickly reversed that a little bit with at least maybe half of the fan bases. And that's John Tortorella, who obviously, stepped in last week and defended Kevin Hayes and all that stuff in his press conference after the Cutter Gauthier situation. But then he goes and scratches Bobby Brink in his first game in Minnesota, playing in front of friends and family. And I want to hear your opinion about it before I give mine, because I have mixed emotions, and I expect you to have mixed emotions as well. But it's something that got a rise out of a lot of fans. I don't think it's as big of a deal as people made it. But what do you think about the situation?
Um, it's a good question, and it's a good debate. And all I'm gonna say is, you know, where do you draw the line on this
Mhm.
type of thing? And every coach has their style, and we know what we're getting out of Torts. Okay, Torts is not making feel good decisions for the Philadelphia Flyers. He's not making feel good decisions for the players. This is about a plan that he has. Okay, he's been given really a difficult task in Philadelphia where, hey, I know that you hate losing and are going to try to win every night, but oh yeah, we need you to develop these players, these young players that we want to be part of the future of our team while holding them accountable and trying to win. Like, young players make mistakes. So it's a difficult situation that I think Tort is in, because it's kind of contradictory. What he's doing right now, one contradicts the other just naturally, trying to develop young players while trying to win. You just don't really see that super successful. And he seemed to have found the recipe with some of these guys. Cam York is playing some of the best hockey of his career. Travis Sanheim is playing the best hockey of his career. Bobby Brink, okay, looks like he's an NHLer. Although he's gone up and down, he does look like an NHLer. So you almost have to give Torts the benefit of the doubt that he knows what he's doing with these guys. And look, do you like seeing Bobby Brink get scratched in his hometown? No, but again, this isn't the feel good league. This isn't
Mhm.
the let's hug it out league. And I know Torts said stuff like that.
Yeah.
The guy's got a job to do, or he's not going to have a job. So at the end of the day, I'm going to go ahead and say this is difficult, because where do you draw the line? Look
Yeah.
at the Yandel situation with the Iron Man. Look at the Fleury situation, playing potentially his last game in Pittsburgh. Okay. Jason Spezza scratched
Well,
by Mike Babcock in Toronto in
mhm.
his first game back. Where do you draw the line? Do you say rookie you can abuse and veteran you have to respect? Like, where do you draw the line? I don't know the question. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think for me in this situation, those three players that you named, those are all veterans that have like done it. They've been there. It's something that they're probably, I don't want to say accustomed to, because they probably aren't used to getting scratched in their careers. But for Bobby Brink, like, he's played 37 games out of the team's 43. He hasn't been scratched much. He's got 7 goals, 11 assists, 18 points, is +7, like having a pretty solid rookie year. And I actually believe when they played Minnesota at home, he scored 2 goals. Like, he's not a liability out there in any way. And I think in this situation, when a player is in the NHL pretty consistently in a rookie year, going home for the first time, having friends and family see him in the NHL for the first time, knowing that he probably spent a lot of money on tickets again for the first time. Like, a lot of fans don't understand that these players like don't get to give out tickets for free. Like, they spend a lot of their own money to get their friends and family in the building. And I learned that the hard way. I actually texted Charlie McAvoy his rookie year, and I was like, "Hey, can we get 4 tickets for the game?" He's like, "What do you think? I'm made of money?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just thought you get tickets." And that's not how it works. So, I think had Torts and Bobby Brink had that conversation, and Bobby Brink had not bought tickets for his whole friends and family, it's a different story. But when you know that, and I think that's just a tougher way to, decide. And I think the fact that as a player, I know I always played better when I knew I had friends and family in the building. And maybe, that's on me. Like I should be able to get up like that for any game. But I think most players would agree that when you are returning for a big moment like that, a game you have circled on the calendar, you're probably going to give a little bit of a better effort than you do on a typical night. And maybe you disagree with that. I don't know.
No, listen, it's human nature, Johnny. I mean,
Yeah.
look, you're playing in front of your family, you're playing in
Like I
front of
would have
your friends.
started him in that game.
I get it, but again, his play had been slipping, his ice time had been slipping. It was time for a reset. And again, it's unlucky because he played the next night in Winnipeg. And I think with young players, sometimes they need a reset because you don't want to reinforce a guy's bad habits, and especially Torts. Like, you've got to give John Tortorella the benefit of the doubt with anything that he does right now. Look at what he's getting out of these players. Look at what he's getting out of this team. And it's just not a coach's job to be worried about how many tickets that Bobby Brink bought for the game.
Yeah.
I'll give you some other
I wasn't like
interesting
disagreeing, by the
examples.
way. I don't think
Listen, I knew you would be Johnny Sunshine and
No,
Rainbows
but I don't
with
think
this,
Torch is like a
and
dickhead for doing it. I just think
I just think that
you know.
this is a difficult situation. It's not a one size fits all approach. I think the thing about John Tortorella that guys respect and like about him is the fact that he's consistent. Okay. Like,
and always
that's
honest.
what you want. He's different than John Cooper. I'll give you a John Cooper story. The Tampa Bay Lightning are playing against the New York Rangers. Okay. Kevin Shattenkirk, a guy who's very well respected in the NHL, got bought out by the New York Rangers. What did Coop do? Coop made him an assistant captain for the game in New York because he knew he'd have 150 friends and family there. He knew. Now, this is a guy who's on his way to 1,000 games, who's been an Olympian, who's been an all-star, who's one of the most well-liked players and respected players in the league. He sits on executive committees for the NHLPA, yada, 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 right? But where do you draw the line? Okay, you want to look after your players. You want to have their back. You want them to feel supported, but it's just not his job to be worried about how many tickets that Bobby Brink bought.
But it's his job to be worried about his players' emotions and feelings. That is his job. That is.
I understand that, but you know
that
what?
is.
It's also players' jobs to not be so sensitive and to realize that if you're not playing well, you're going to get pulled out of the lineup.
Yeah.
Okay, like it's happened to a lot of players. Okay, it's happened to a lot of situations, some that we know, some that we don't. It's unfortunate. It is. You hate to see it. But at the end of the day, it's not the feel-good league. It's the National Hockey League. It's the win for me now or get fired, play well or get cut and traded, unless you have an 8-year contract with no move, no trade. And at the end of the day, I get it. It sucks, but I get it. I do. I've been in these situations. I've seen them at all like levels of players' careers. You hate it. You think, coaches should treat veterans a different way than they should treat rookies. But look what Cutter Gauthier just did. Okay. He's a rookie who's never even played in the NHL, and he's not afraid to flex his muscle. So now you're going to tell me that we got to worry about, a first-year NHL player's feelings? Come on. Like, what are we talking about here? At the end of the day, your coaches just need to be consistent. Okay. However they handle it is what you got to be cool with and what you got to deal with.
It is also just funny though, too. Like Torch is the good guy around the NHL last week, and he's like, "Nah, I can't have
for
this.
Kevin Hayes." Hold my beer.
Yeah,
hey, hold my beer.
I can't be the good guy around here. I got to do something to shake it up.
That's
again.
exactly what I said. Hold my beer. What did I say? But again, that's how you know him scratching Bobby Brink. It wasn't a personal. It wasn't a fuck you to him. He's not even thinking about that. Okay. And if he is, well, then maybe he's not doing his job properly. And maybe he's not building the culture that he preaches. Your word culture. Okay. You like that word, the buzzword. Everybody loves the word culture.
But I think I've been in really good cultures and I've been in really bad ones. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. And people,
but players are part of culture too, not just coaches.
No, 1,000%. I think players they drive the culture, right? Like the
100%.
best organizations are the coaches that don't have to say anything. It's all through the players. Like that's why, I think Boston is the machine they are because the players have been around for a decade and guys come in and they know exactly what they have to do because the Brad Marchands, the Bergerons, they're doing it. They're setting the bar.
Because
Yeah.
Bergie learned from Chara,
Player driven.
Marshy,
Yeah.
Marshy learned from Bergie, and
Mhm.
so on and so forth.
Yep. And when Marchand's gone, and I mean Pasternak's around and whatever, but that's gonna need the McAvoy, right? Like,
I think it's going
McAvoy.
to be the McAvoy driving the culture. I mean, I know
100%.
Pasta's great, but I think that's going to be Charlie kind of taking the flag next.
I agree, as it should be. Um, I know we do have a couple more topics to get to. I think it's time for just a little break here. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about the All-Star rosters that are coming up. We're going to talk about
The snubs.
the snubs, yes, and the huge slate of games coming up today. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Morning Cup of Hockey. For the first time on this show, Colby and I are going to give our NHL power rankings, the top 5 teams that we think are the best in the NHL right now. And we'll actually look at the chat to see if you agree or disagree with our rankings, because as you know by now, if you've been watching this show, Colby and I don't really see eye to eye on most of these things. So let's check out what each of us have for our top 5 teams right now in the NHL.
Couple important notes here. Okay,
Uh-huh.
first off, we did not know what the other person was
Yeah.
coming with. We did not talk about this other than, we spoke to our producer about this. So, and the other thing that I just want to make sure that we point out here is the fact that these are power rankings for who's the best teams right now. Okay, this is not necessarily me saying who I think is going to win the Stanley Cup. Okay, this is not, you know, indicative of the standings in the NHL. This is who are the teams that I believe are playing the best hockey right now. And I think this is something that we're going to try to revisit every week, maybe every other week, depending on the way things are moving in the NHL. Because I think what we've seen this year is it seems like every other week we have a new team that's is streaking, playing well, not playing well. So I think it's just kind of important to stay up on the trends, Jonny, of really who is playing the best in the NHL right now. So I'll let you read off your top 5 to start here, Jonny, and maybe you can explain why you picked these teams.
And you know what's funny? I actually so I'll say my teams first, then I'll get into it. But my number 1 team, I thought the Colorado Avalanche. They've been buzzing as of late. I think for me, they have the most talent on any roster in the NHL. 2, the Winnipeg Jets. Goaltending, Connor Hellebuyck's been outstanding. The under 3 goal streak they have going is beyond incredible, and I think defense obviously is very important in the NHL. Vancouver, I mean, can't compliment them enough. The offense, the defense, the goaltending, they have it all this year, but they haven't been there as of late, so it's still kind of a fraud watch, I think, for me. The Florida Panthers, again, after last year's run, I doubted them this year. They've proved me wrong time and time again. Sam Reinhart is putting that team on his back. They've been a lot of fun to watch, and they play big boy, heavy hockey. And the Carolina Hurricanes, after a really rough start to the year, like we talked about earlier in the show, their culture, I believe in it. I think Rod Brindamore is the best coach in the NHL, and they play such a strong, cohesive game. And as of late, they've been scoring goals. Their power play is doing well. Andrei Svechnikov's on fire. They just look really good as a complete team. So that's why I put the 5. But it's funny because the one team that I wasn't sure if I wanted to put in there was the Winnipeg Jets, and I put them at 2. But because Kyle Connor's not playing right now, I still don't know how much I really believe in them. And I really wanted to get the Oilers in there because their 10-game win streak that they're on right now. But with what Winnipeg's done just through the entire year, I felt it was just too hard to take them out and put Edmonton in. But I don't know
All
if
right.
you have anything in common with that.
Oh, I have thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
Vic, let's get those back up. There we go. So
Uh-huh.
I just want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
How can you call Vancouver the fraud alert or fraud watch? Do you know what they've done in their last 10 games?
Yeah, I
They're
think they've
8-1-1 in their
I
last 10 games. They just
I'm
came on
aware.
an East swing and they just assassinated everybody that they played
I'm
for
aware.
2 weeks on the
But
East Coast. They've got Thatcher Demko, who is an all-star goaltender and maybe the best goalie in the NHL on any given night. They've got Quinn Hughes, who is currently playing as the best defenseman in the NHL. You've got Besser, who's I just look. I don't
yeah.
think the Vancouver Canucks are going to win the cup. But if
Mhm.
we're talking about NHL power rankings, how can you say there's a team playing better than them right now? I mean,
I
what are you
think
watching?
I that's not what I said. I said they're playing very good hockey. I said they're on fraud watch because they haven't done it before. They're a
What do you
team that
mean
has
done it
they
before?
haven't
They've
they
been doing it
haven't
all
been
season.
but they haven't been good in the last 4 or 5 years where
Yeah,
the
but we're
other
not talking about that. We're talking about NHL power rankings today.
I know that,
Are you sure?
you have to factor in a little bit of everything. Otherwise, why would the Oilers not be one? They've won 10 games in a row. Why would they not be the number 1 team? If we're just talking about today, there are characteristics that play into it, right?
Yeah, but being 10-0 and being 8-1-1, I mean, there's not much of a difference there. And
But
on top of it, you just look at who's actually playing better hockey, the way they're winning, the opponents that they're beating. I mean, look, I just that's hold on. You went, so now you be
yeah.
quiet and you give me an
Well, you're
opportunity
coming at me.
here.
I
Yeah,
haven't
well,
had a chance
because
to
I
defend
mean,
myself.
I didn't fraud alert. I mean, give me a fucking break here. It's like I'm not
I'm
saying that they're going to win the Stanley Cup
I
championship, but I mean, fraud alert. I mean that kind of pissed me off a little bit.
I'm
No,
not calling them
let me
frauds.
just say
I'm saying
this.
of the 5 teams, they probably would make the case for the fraud on that list.
All right. Well,
That's what
look,
I'm saying.
our 5 teams were fairly similar. They were
Mhm,
similar.
mhm.
I had Edmonton rounding out the top 5 because yeah, they're 10-0 in their last 10 games.
Yeah.
They are on the best quote unquote streak in the NHL right now. They've been playing a lot of games in the Eastern time zone lately, so I have got to see them lately. They're playing good hockey. They're still reliant too much on 2 guys. Well, if maybe 3 guys, if you add Bouchard in there, the way that he's been playing offensively, which is why I didn't have Edmonton as number 1.
Mhm.
But the interesting thing, and neither of us had Seattle in there.
Yeah.
And Seattle's been, what 9-0 and 9 out of they've won 9 of their last 10, something like that.
Yeah, around there.
They're on a pretty incredible run right now. So
Seattle's
I
9-0-1 in their last 10. 9-game
9-0
winning
and
streak.
1. Now
9-game winning
now
streak.
on my power ranking list, okay, we saw what the first 5 were. Let me read you my number 6 through 10, which obviously aren't on here, partially because I just want to see your reaction,
Mhm.
okay? Number 6, Seattle. Number 7, Boston. Number 8, Carolina. Number 9, Philadelphia. And number 10, the New York Rangers.
I don't disagree. I think the Rangers don't deserve to be in there right now. I fully agree with you. But I think Carolina isn't getting enough credit, to be honest. I think Carolina, if you look at their numbers in the last, I think since like Christmas, here, I'll grab it right now. Carolina since Christmas, right now they're leading the NHL in goals per game, scoring 4.38. They're only allowing 2 goals against per game, and
Which is always their problem.
their power play is at 44.4% in their last 8 games, 7-0-1 in that span. Carolina right now is playing their best hockey of the year, and they're a team again that isn't really talked about because they don't have that star power, but Andrei Svechnikov has been providing that lately. Svechnikov's been money in the last 10 or so games. I'm going to try to find his stat line in the last 10 because he's been scoring goals at a nonstop rate.
Yeah.
But I didn't do a 5, 6, 7, 8, or a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I didn't go above and beyond on the homework, so that's my fault, I guess. But Svechnikov in his last 10 games, 8 goals, 8 assists, 23 shots on goal, and 8 power play points. I mean, he's doing it all right now for
Yeah.
Carolina. I
Well,
think
and
they deserve a little more
I
credit.
think with Carolina, I think one of the things that they decided to do, because they're still missing that star potential, game breaker type of player up front, they built their back end up.
Yeah.
I mean, Carolina has one of the more impressive back ends with Pesci and Burns and Shea. You've got Chatfield on that third pair playing over Tony D'Angelo. It's they brought Orlov in this summer. I mean, that's a legitimate group of 6, or even really legitimate group of 7 defensemen that the Carolina Hurricanes have. I kind of struggled with that a little bit. But at the end of the day, I just, the eye test has told me that I liked the way Florida and Colorado and Edmonton were playing. And I think if those teams played right now, I think they'd all get the best of Carolina. But
Colby, this guy Smitty the welder in the chat is roasting me right now. I want to read it to you. He goes, "Oh well, Johnny's drunk. The Oilers have the best record next to the Jets in the last 2 months." And then he said, "What did he say?" He said, "Johnny's clueless. Carolina in the top 5." Laughing emojis. So
I mean, I would agree.
I guess
Listen,
Smitty's an Edmonton guy. But
Smitty,
yeah,
I'm going to tell you right now, Smitty,
Yeah,
I agree with a lot of that sentiment, because
Yeah.
I do think Johnny's quite clueless.
Smitty, hey, Smitty, I don't disagree with what you're saying here.
No, don't back down, Johnny.
No,
Don't stand up for
I'm
yourself.
still taking
You put a
Carolina over
list-
Edmonton.
Listen, you put a list on paper.
I'm still taking
Defend your
Carolina over Edmonton. I
position.
am.
Do not back away from it. Have I taught you nothing?
I'm taking Carolina over Edmonton. I'm standing by that. But I respect his opinion. It's fine, or her opinion, whatever Smitty is. I don't know. It's fine. Like, what I said, like, I had a hard time keeping Edmonton out of that list. But with what Winnipeg's done,
Not
all
that
year,
hard, apparently. 10-0.
Yeah. All right, sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying? I just wanted to shout out the chat because
Well, and the other thing about the Edmonton
banter.
Oilers that you can't deny is you just can't deny how much more thorough defensively they've been. I mean, it almost seems like Paul Coffey came in and told the back end, listen, none of you are me, so we're all going to play a certain way, and we're all going to just, dial back the high risk, high reward hockey. Let's take that first play. Let's defend around our net. I mean, look, that team has really come a long way, and so we'll see how long Edmonton can carry that streak. They've certainly put themselves back in the playoff picture. Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard have done a nice job sort of holding it down. There's some buzz going around that Corey Perry might be a fit there in Edmonton. I personally would love to see that. I think Edmonton and Toronto are probably the 2 teams that make the most sense for Corey Perry. But the other guy that I said, I was on Oilers Nation the other night with Tyler Yaremchuk, and I said they should look at Peter Mrazek as a potential 1B type of option. His contract's going to expire. The Hawks can afford to eat whatever they need to eat on his deal to make a deal like that work. So, all right, look, we're going to keep these power rankings going. I like the fact that people are in the chat voicing their opinions.
I think I'm just
I
gonna
like
keep
the fact
snubbing
that
Edmonton every week just to get this Smitty guy going.
I like the fact that they think you're an idiot. That means that they're smart because you are an idiot. I think, to be honest, that segues us perfectly into the fact that how did Zach Hyman not make the All-Star game?
Yeah.
Okay. How did Noah Dobson not make the All-Star game? And what on earth was the NHL, Adidas, Justin Bieber, whoever designed those hideous All-Star game jerseys? I mean, it's like they forgot to do their homework, and at 11 p.m. for a 12 o'clock deadline, they just threw a practice jersey together. I mean, what is happening here between the snubs and the jerseys, man?
After last year's jerseys too, like those were so sick last year. If you remember, like that teal, like blue and black, and the pink, it was kind of like a '90s throwback. Do you remember that?
Wasn't it? It was like Florida themed, right? It was very like Miami Vice. It felt very Miami Vice last year.
But they were so sick. Those jerseys were unreal. But I guess let's go one at a time. Zach Hyman, that one is interesting. I mean, he's obviously leading Edmonton in goals this year. He's been unbelievable. I think he has 26 right now as we're talking. He obviously deserves.
This guy's gonna hit 30 the 30 goal plateau by the end of this week.
He 1,000% deserves to be in there. I don't think anyone would disagree. The Dobson one, I'm a little bit more not angry, but I have more like opinions about because Noah Dobson right now, what is he third amongst defensemen in points? Like here's the thing too. Matt Barzal is certainly a more popular, well-known player. If I'm the Islanders, like why not put Dobson in and have fans vote for Barzal? Like there's a better chance that happens than what's going on right now because I don't is like Noah Dobson a household name across the NHL yet? I don't know if he is. And I think he definitely deserves to be with what he's doing this year, especially, no?
Well, the thing is they've sort of protected him for a couple of years in New
Uh-huh.
York. You know, Lamoriello has a plan for these guys, and his ice time was very limited in his first year, and then he get a little bit more in his second year, and now he's a little more in his third year, and now he's that's just kind of the way they do things with Lou Lamoriello. It's never too much too soon.
Mhm.
So no, I don't think Noah Dobson is a household name. Look, I'll tell you this. I voted midseason awards for the Daily Faceoff the other day. Matt Larkin put out a piece, doing a midway point on all the major awards, and you had to give 3 players for each of the major awards. I had Noah Dobson as one of my 3 guys for the Norris Trophy.
1,000%.
I
Yeah.
had Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, and Noah
Yeah.
Dobson. And the fact that he doesn't make the All-Star game, I agree. Now, he's probably happy he didn't make the All-Star game unless he's got a bonus in his contract
Yeah.
because, now
I
he
don't know.
gets.
I think first time recognition, I feel like he'd want to be there. I
Yeah,
think
I
if you
think you
never made
want
an
to you
All-Star
want to
game.
get recognized, but then you kind of hoping maybe you've got an excuse why you don't have to go.
Yeah.
But I know, no, I know. Listen, Noah, a guy I actually know Noah pretty well. He's a from way up northeast Canada. But it is a little bit tragic that him and Zach Hyman don't get into the All-Star game, and Edmonton Toronto and Vancouver vote like
Yeah,
you
4
know
each.
it
Yeah.
literally it turned into like half their roster, which is a little
Yeah.
bit ridiculous. But
And then
hey,
Rantanen and
listen,
Barkov miss out too, like,
yeah,
2 guys that and again, like, is it not the truest thing ever that every year when the most underrated player in the NHL conversation comes up, it's always Alexander Barkov every year. So at what point do we not underrate him and just let him be
yeah.
the
Well,
player that
but
he is?
look at these guys that are snubbed, and then look at who Chicago's gonna send. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't like maybe Seth Jones is gonna go because he's back playing now. And so maybe they're gonna shoehorn Seth Jones in, which like, okay, fine. I would be fine if it was Seth Jones because at least Seth Jones is a he's a top flight player in the NHL. He's an all-star. He's been to multiple all-star games, Olympics, whatever. Well, maybe he hasn't done an Olympics because they haven't had one. But that I would feel okay about. But if Jason Dickinson is in the All-Star game and Zach Hyman and Noah Dobson and Mikko Rantanen and Barkov aren't, it just tells you what you need to know about the All-Star
Yeah.
game. It's turned into an absolute shit show. It's a
Yeah.
game that nobody cares about anymore. Players don't want to play. Fans don't really watch. It's gotten ugly. They're trying different formats, but I think it's all put a perfect little bow on it with how ugly the jerseys are. Like, I actually thought the jersey thing was a joke. Like, I thought they were leaking it as a joke because, like, what are we looking at here? Like, how have we fallen so far with the All-Star game that this is the freaking jerseys they're going to roll out?
I mean, again, like, especially after last year, like, it was such a step up from everything in the past, and I thought this year they'd even go up a notch because it's in Toronto, right? Like, it's in the hub of hockey this year, and
Exactly. You'd have thought they would have gone all out. And I
yeah.
think did you see that this was like a collab with Justin Bieber and did you see that or am I making that up?
I don't think the jerseys are. I saw that he had his own, like, Drew branded jersey, I think. I don't think he had anything to do with the design, but I will
I
say,
could have sworn that I read that.
I don't know. I had to double check on that, but,
Can you read? You can read.
yeah, but I didn't read that, so I'd have to look, but
I
I
don't
did
think
see the
you read
video
the
of, like,
sign. I don't think you read the sign at the haircut place you went to either when
yeah,
you saw like, 2 for 1 free haircuts or
yeah,
something like that. So I mean,
that was rough.
your reading is in question.
Yeah, the haircut thing, I'm pretty bummed about, to be honest. So
I'd feel insecure about it
yeah,
too if I had a haircut like that.
don't poke at my insecurity. Where were we? What were we talking about? Now I'm totally thrown off.
God, you're so easy to get off track. We're talking about the jerseys.
Uh-huh.
Bieber did have his hand in designing the jerseys, by the way. It was part of the press release, so you're
Okay,
wrong again.
my bad.
Shocker.
Smitty, come at me in the chat.
Um, Good.
Yep.
Keep coming at Jonny
Yep.
in the chat. This is not how I thought this would go. I thought people would constantly be coming for my throat in the chat. So I'm happy to hear. Keep going for Jonny. He thinks the Edmonton Oilers stink.
So old sneaky Pete in the chat is saying that Bieber's logo is on the tag of the jerseys.
Right, which means
Yeah.
his design company, his people, whatever, like they were a part of it. Like
I'm hoping we can trust
like,
old sneaky Pete in the chat as a source. Or as a
look,
reference.
Justin Bieber, very talented, obviously. But like the way he dresses, I've never jumped on board with the way that guy dresses and his sense of fashion. So
if I looked like that, I would wear anything too. That guy could pull off anything. Let's be honest.
yeah, okay, that's your opinion. I don't agree, but like I said, extremely talented, but I don't, his level for fashion is not my thing. And how many cups have the Leafs won since they started with their Justin Bieber jerseys? I mean, I think we know the answer to that. So, anyways, we'll be at All-Star, so that'll be fun. We're gonna do some live shows out in Toronto. I know you're gonna have probably 1,000,001 things to do out there. You'll be doing, this, and you'll be doing that, and you'll be playing in this and playing in that.
I'm playing
Why
an
don't you tell us?
outdoor 3-on-3 creator tournament or creator game. Not really sure what the details are of that game yet, but it's at the cool. I'm blanking on the name. Maybe our producer can help me out. But that outdoor rink with like the big Nathan Phillips Square, the big Toronto logo where all the cool pictures and scenic shots are taken in the city of Toronto when there are Leafs games on TV and whatnot. So I'm excited to play out there. It'll be really cool. And excited to be with some friends of mine and stuff.
Do you think Islanders fans are going to come to that creator game and heckle you like they have been on social media the last couple of days?
Yeah, I mean, listen, do I owe them an apology for that? What do you think?
Why are you asking me?
I don't know, because I didn't watch the game live. The Islanders at the end of their game against Nashville, a bad turnover in the D zone, cost them the game basically in like the dying seconds of the game.
7 seconds.
They let up an empty net goal after that. I wasn't watching the game live, so I saw this clip on social media of nobody on the Islander bench. There's no score bug on the clip either, so I don't know how much time was left. The whole Predators bench is there. There's 5 guys lined up for the faceoff, and it's just Bo Horvat standing by himself on the bench. So immediately my reaction is, oh, really bad look. Islanders salty that they lost this game. They took off and went to the locker room. I didn't know all the other factors that went into it, like the Predators scored at the buzzer and they put time back on the clock because I guess you have to take a faceoff for the rules for it to be a goal or something like that. And, I said, like, really bad look for the Islanders here. They took off, left the bench, and Bo Horvat's basically there by himself, like being an accountable guy, like that's showing leadership, showing sportsmanship and whatnot. And, Islander fans went at me because I didn't have the full context. Rightfully so. I deserve to have them come at me. But
so
again,
you jumped the gun.
But again, I'm not wrong.
You created a narrative.
I created a narrative, not purposely. I also
I think it was purposely, but
I knew it'd get a reaction, but it wasn't like the Islanders are scumbags for doing this. It was like, what's going on here? Like, why are they not?
Whoa. Now you're calling them scumbags? I mean, geez,
no, I didn't say that.
Like, I didn't think that's where we were
going
going to go with this.
I didn't.
You're throwing around the term Islanders and scumbags. You saw what happened to Biz Nasty.
I'm not an Islander hater.
He started calling the Islanders scumbags. You saw what Butch Goring did. Do you want Butch Goring knocking on your door? I mean, you better chill out with this, buddy.
I have receipts of me complimenting the Islanders, and Islander fans actually hate when I compliment them because they call me a mush. And I complimented the Islanders 3 weeks ago, and they lose 7-0 to Pittsburgh. Like the day I did it, like that's just how it goes with the Islander fans. But Thomas Hickey was kind enough to give us the context on the situation, but it's still optically a bad look when there's nobody on your bench and the other team has their entire lineup out there. So my instant reaction before getting any context was, hey, what's going on here? This is not a good look. And
do you ever watch Islander games? Do you watch them on their network?
Yeah, I think Brendan Burke is one of the best play-by-play guys in the NHL. I love listening to him call games.
I was actually just going to pay a compliment to one of his teammates, Thomas Hickey, who was the guy who came into Twitter and added some context to your false narrative that you were trying to create as a Rangers guy.
Islander propaganda.
Thomas Hickey is really settled into being, doing a nice job on TV. I think this year, for the first time, they're adding him between the benches. So he's working with Butch Goring and Brendan Burke, which isn't easy to do when you've got Butch and Brendan who have worked together for a while. They throw you in between the benches. And he's really come a long way quickly. Like most guys take time to get good at TV, but I got to give Hickey a lot of credit. He's kind of stepped right into that role for the Islanders on TV, and I think he's done a really nice job, kind of breaking, just kind of breaking himself into that role. He does NHL Network stuff as well. One other thing I want to ask you about, Jonny, because I got a laugh out of this. I really did. I don't know if you saw on Twitter or X this weekend, the Flyers fans not getting let in to Conti Forum in Chestnut Hill. They were wearing Cutter Gauthier t-shirts, Flyers jerseys. They wouldn't let them into the building. Finally, they let them into the building, and then they had signs about Gauthier. They apparently were throwing stuff. They had to make an announcement, no throwing things on the ice. What did you make of that whole situation?
Part of me thinks it's like awesome because I love passionate hockey fans and like the fan base. And I listen, Cutter Gauthier is just going to have to embrace this hate, right? Like he has no other choice. He's going to have to wear it. He knows what he did. He's going to take it on the chin, and that's how it's going to be for the next 20 years. Did I think that Flyer fans would embrace the hate at a college game? Couldn't have guessed that. I don't think anyone would have guessed that.
That's not true, by the way. I disagree with you.
Really?
Listen, man.
Really?
Flyers fans, Philly sports fans
Yeah.
are as vindictive as
I've
it
just never
gets,
seen that
and
before.
they are as vindictive as it gets. They run on hate. It's what makes them so passionate. It's what, gives Philadelphia teams throughout the history of sports, home field, home ice, whatever advantage. Look, I actually thought that this was hysterical because, I would so much prefer this than going on Twitter and bashing him. Okay. This is what makes sports great.
Now he's getting both.
Okay. I don't like going on Twitter and sending death threats. I think that is the most obnoxious, low life thing you could ever do.
Yeah.
Okay. Quit being a keyboard warrior. You want to chirp the guy? Fine. Chirp him. Okay. But like this whole faceless shit talking society that we've kind of created, I think is spineless.
Yeah.
But for you to actually rally a group of people, buy tickets to the game, show up at the game with signs, and heckle the kid, I think that's awesome. I really do. I hope Gauthier fed off it as a player.
He scored and they smoked Providence.
Listen, they absolutely crushed Providence that night, like 7 or 8-1, whatever it was. They did lose the next night against Providence, but I loved this. Honestly, I did not, my reaction to this was I respect this so much more than going after a guy on social media because you're putting your name, your time, your face, your money to it. So I don't know, man. I liked it. I thought it was great. I hope he embraces this stuff.
Yeah.
He is a great player. He's going to be a great player. I said on the record that I didn't have a problem with what he did. I just didn't like how he did it. Players use their leverage just like teams every day use their leverage. So it's okay for a player to use theirs. But ultimately, when people were coming at me on Twitter, which they were, mostly Devils fans, interestingly enough, people that I think I've picked up on Twitter because of you.
They go with everybody.
I know you have your beef with Devils fans consistently.
I have such a love-hate with them. It's insane.
Actually, Rangers fans as well. But a lot of my mentions, people are like, oh, once a year, Cutter Gauthier is going to be in Philadelphia. You underestimate the hate and the vindictive levels of Philadelphia sports fans because they will come for you anywhere. And
they're going to do it in Anaheim when he gets there.
I honestly think that you might see Flyers fans continue to go to his games throughout the rest of this year and heckle him. I believe that will happen.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see the college thing coming, but it's not going to be a surprise anymore. Like that's for sure. And you actually made a good point. I don't know if we want to dive too deep into it, but I know we were talking on the phone on Friday, and coaches, the loyalty to a player, it's not depending on who you are in an organization, you're expendable, right? So I think this Cutter Gauthier thing, now that we've kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess marinated in it, for lack of a better term. I kind of have started to respect him just a little bit more and more because I've seen players or coaches, treat players, just like they're a number on a roster and that's it, right? Like you're so quick to trade a guy and the loyalty is not always there from the top end. So seeing it come the other way around, You know, I'm not saying it should happen often, but I do respect it a little bit more.
Listen, man, sports, there's very little loyalty. Okay.
Yeah.
Just remember something. Wayne Gretzky got traded, the
Yeah.
great one. Okay. Anybody can be traded. Okay. Anybody. You see teams control the destiny of their players, their coaches, their staff. I've been fired from an NHL team. Okay. After buying a house. You think they cared? They didn't care at all. All right. They don't care about that stuff. You think they care? Oh, you're going to lose your health insurance now. You think they care? No, they do not care. The loyalty most of the time that comes from a sports organization is limited. So, yes, if a player has leverage, they want to use their leverage, use it. But it's how you use it
Yeah.
is the problem with the Cutter Gauthier situation, not that he used it. We've already done this. We've talked in circles about it. So we don't need to dive too far into it, but it's definitely a situation we'll keep an eye on because, you know, Flyers fans, you know, like to be heard. And like I said, man, they run off spite. They're vindictive. They're passionate. I mean, you're going to see it probably in the coming days, depending on what happens with the Eagles game this evening. So, how about a couple of 1:00 games today, Johnny? That's nice. I love that for the holiday, you know?
It is Martin Luther King Day, and there's a game actually at noon. San Jose Sharks and Buffalo Sabres kick things off for the day. There's 10 games.
That'll be a
throughout the
barn
entire.
burner, huh?
Yeah, exactly right. Nothing, no better way to start the day. Sharks, Sabres. But then the Devils and Bruins play at 1. That'll be a fun one. And then there's games throughout the entire day. I'm trying to see what the most interesting matchup tonight would be. For me, actually, I think it's the Islanders and the Wild. Minnesota has been struggling a lot lately. They're coming off a 6-0 loss at home against the Arizona Coyotes. Obviously, we just touched on the Islanders in their most recent game against Nashville. So that's a big game for both teams. That's the one I'll probably have my eye on the most today. How about you?
Seemed like they got a little bump when they hired John Hines and they played good for a couple of weeks, but you're right. It's been a disaster. So, you know, that team really struggles without Kaprizov. He's a big difference maker. But lots of hockey on today. Carolina versus the LA Kings. LA has been kind of sputtering, a little bit out of control. I think this is the time of year.
Is that a made up word? Sputtering?
Yeah, whatever. If it is,
We're starting to keep count on the Colby made up words.
You don't think sputtering is a real word?
Never heard it in my life.
Really?
We can look that up after.
Sputtering. It's sputter is a real word, and it says that sputtering works as well. So,
well, nothing you.
You're wrong.
Okay.
Again.
Yeah.
And we'll see everybody tomorrow, right, Johnny?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you to my new best friend in the chat, Smitty. Thank you to our producer, Vic, and we'll talk to you all tomorrow. Enjoy the day of hockey. Enjoy the holiday.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.